Welcome back to the Leaders on Purpose CEO Summit. My name is Edie Lush. I'm the co-host and executive producer of the Global Goals Cast. We are delighted to be in partnership with Leaders on Purpose for this fabulous event. So for those of us who are just joining us for this first session, delighted to have you. For those of us who have been with us for the morning, apologies for any issues that you may have had with technical difficulties. I can tell you after 6 months of emceeing conferences that no conference that I have emceed has gone without a technical difficulty. This is just part of the deal. So one thing I am absolutely clear to you, we are leaving an age where numbers alone ruled. Not everything that can be counted matters, and not everything that matters can be counted. But where does that leave you and your business? Here are two people who can help. They're going to discuss art, design, and how they can serve as a cross-cultural language to encourage change. I want to first of all welcome Roxy Shahadi. She has the title of Architect of the Design Science Studio, and Amanda Joy Ravenhill, Executive Director of the Buckminster Fuller Institute. I am going to hand it over to you, fantastic women, right now.
Thank you. So I am, as mentioned, the director and architect of the Design Science Studio and the founder and CEO of Habitual. I'm an interdisciplinary designer, experiential producer, artist, and creative doula, and I work at the intersection of art, science, experience, and technology to catalyze social and systemic change through inclusive transdisciplinary collaborations for the regeneration of our planet and culture. My path is grounded in a commitment to creating inspiring and embodied ways of learning together.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda Joy Ravenhill, Executive Director here at Buckminster Fuller Institute and cartographer of complexity within the Design Science Studio. I I'm dedicated to regenerating our Earth's ecosystems and our ecosystems in the process. I previously held the role of co-founder and executive director of Project Drawdown, which is the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. And I'm just a planet-loving goofball. Really honored to be here and honored to be on this path with all of you.
The Design Science Studio is a program of the Buckminster Fuller Institute in partnership with Evolutionary. Everyone, it is time for the Regenaissance. The Renaissance was a critically influential cultural movement which brought about a period of scientific revolution, political and economic rebirth, and transformation through art at the dawn of modern European history. Creators were funded to focus all of their energy on their craft. The Renaissance promoted the rediscovery of classical philosophy, literature, and art as a pivotal tool for social and systemic change. In history, it marks the transitional period between the end of the Middle Ages and the start of the modern age. It is time for the Regenaissance. Through interdisciplinary art, we can transform our path forward, regenerate our culture, our planet, and our relationship with the living world. The power of art and design is a cross-cultural technology and language for systemic change. Today, we will explore this together. When we look back in history, we see the power of art to catalyze and propel a movement. Guernica, which is the piece that we're seeing here, was created by Pablo Picasso. It was his most powerful political statement, and it was painted as an immediate reaction to the Nazis' devastating casual bombing practice in the Basque town during the Spanish Civil War. The tour of this art helped bring the Spanish Civil War to the world's attention. Guernica became a marker of humanity, the message of which is still understood by people all over the world. At the end of this post-war era, we had this surge of utopian science fiction when everything seemed possible, from flying cars to whole cities designed for life to thrive. Those inspiring visions led to a whole decade of mind-blowing advancements and innovations in science, and they cultivated and culminated a culture in humanity that led to us setting foot on the moon. These are some of the movements across history. And when we look forward now, we see more recently the spoken word revolution and what that did for hip hop and rap and activating global communities to rise up and shake from their roots with their voices and their art. The Guerrilla Girls, Afrofuturism, the 60s, Dadaism, most recently gay rights and the Black Lives Matter movement, which took complex systemic racism and turned those very complex ideas into art. People took complexity and turned it into 1-minute long cartoons that rallied global communities to understand changes that were necessary. There's another quick example of the designated driver. It was a partnership that happened in Harvard, and through infiltrating in Hollywood, we were able to introduce this concept, and from film came saving millions of lives. We're in a time of radical system change. This global pandemic has shed light on decades of over-industrialization, alienation from nature, and othering as some of the primary root causes of global inequality, illness, poverty, and environmental degradation. But we still have time to realign ourselves with nature while creating a fertile ground for humanity as a global community. All of social changes and systemic changes start with a story. It is so important to look at the critical technology that storytelling, narrative, and art have in moving communities, in moving systems. It's time to reimagine our society, and it's time for art that changes history. It's time to empower our creators to focus on their superpowers in the world and align with this movement. It's time for the Regenaissance.
Thanks, Roxy. Buckminster Fuller's mission, which is the same mission as the Buckminster Fuller Institute, is to make the world work for 100% of humanity in the shortest possible time through spontaneous cooperation without ecological offense or the disadvantage of anyone. It's quite the riddle, this quote. Go back a slide still. Buckminster Fuller really loved to use language in a precise way. He was known for many things. He's the inventor of the geodesic dome. He's a futurist, a mathematician, a true polymath, a poet. But I think ultimately he was an artist, and his inspiration was looking at nature as design inspiration and really looking at the principles that nature uses. And I think one of the most critical principles that we find across nature and across scales, across disciplines, is that diversity ensures resiliency. I think the whole world is waking up to that right now in terms of biodiversity and also cultural diversity. Buckminster Fuller saw that we would build all the right tools for all the wrong reasons first, and that we would shift from a destructive economy based on the production of weaponry to a circular economy based on the production of livingry, moving from weaponry to livingry. And here we are in the midst of that phase change around the world. Next slide. Buckminster Fuller was the only person to patent a map in the 20th century. This is the Dymaxion map, showing the world as one connected island in one ocean. He talked about the world being spaceship Earth, all of us living aboard this life-supporting, beautifully designed, precious, watery spaceship, hurling through space, and kind of the appreciation that each of us are already astronauts. And Buckminster Fuller called himself a comprehensive anticipatory design scientist. Again, kind of a mouthful and a mindful, comprehensive, let's break it down. Comprehensive is systems thinking, starting with the whole. If you look at just the parts of anything, you're bound to miss kind of the interaction between the two. Buckminster Fuller popularized the word synergy, which is, you know, the behavior of a whole that's unpredicted by just looking at the parts. Being anticipatory, so looking ahead, being a futurist, looking at rates over states. So instead of just looking at where something is right now, really looking at the rate and the trend of change and anticipating that so that we can all design a future that works for all. And then design science, really the heart of this studio and the work that we're doing with Buckminster Fuller Institute is designing a future, creating intentionally, designing this world that works for 100% of life, using science and using ecology, using the principles of nature found all around us and across different disciplines. Buckminster Fuller declared the Design Science Decade in 1965. Like most things, he was about 50 years ahead of his time. And now we've rekindled the second Design Science Decade for the 2020s, matching up with the Sustainable Development Goals. How can we use this moment that we're in and ensure that it's the most concentrated transition moment humanity has yet to experience? In the course of 10 years, we have all the technological capability that we need to build an economy that works for 100% of life. And through the studio and through working with 144 artists around the world, we have laid out these 5 two-year phases. So we are in the midst right now of the first phase around reconciliation and commitment. We are going through kind of a global truth and reconciliation process right now, really identifying the systemic oppression and racism upon which so much of our economy is built, also reconciling all of the different systems, thinking, orientation around how the world actually works, looking at root causes. And then we're making commitments, we're making wild commitments. Corporations are deciding to be resource positive, they're deciding to offset all of their legacy emissions, you know, really using all of the incredibly sophisticated tools that corporations have in order to increase true health and wealth. Buckminster Fuller defined wealth as the sum total of all of our knowing of how to take care of the world. Then we're going to move into the next phase of restoration. It's the decade of ecosystem restoration with the UN. And we're going to go through ecosystem restoration, bringing carbon back into soils, planting trillions of trees, and also shifting trillions in capital. Then we'll move into the phase of resilience as extreme weather continues to come before we can cool our planet in around 2050. We'll have to ensure that diversity ensures resiliency and we can create resilient corporations, cities, communities, and come together really in the face of shocks instead of just taking care of our own. Then we'll move into the phase of regeneration. A lot of the work that we've been doing for so many decades will kind of, you know, have this latency effect, this delay in the system, and we'll see kind of, you know, rivers return to ecosystems and cities begin to flourish again. And then the final phase is continuing to rejoice and become really, really enchanted with our local and global ecosystems and this moment of the circularity, this idea that all of our materials will either be recovered from past products or grown in a regenerative way. So those are the 5 phases. The idea here is really to inspire imagination of just how quickly we can change the script around the world and design a future that works for 100% of life. On to you, Roxy.
We are so grateful to be working in alignment with the Design Science Decade and the Sustainable Development Goals. What future casting like this can do using the power of comprehensive anticipatory design science, innovation for artists, for not only looking at where we're going, but looking at a step-by-step plan to help explore how we might get there. But why creators? Why? We'll tell you. We're committed collectively, all of us, to building a future that works for all. And in transitioning from this old system to the new system, we get to build bridges into our uncertain futures. The old system was mechanistic and the new system is holistic. Creative language and design in itself is sense-making, truth-bridging, and coherence building. It is a language model that goes far beyond words, creating shared experience, resulting in clarified, distilled messages to help move more quickly and purposefully towards collaboration and co-evolution. Immersive installations, experiential art and design are a technology in themselves. They have the potential to simultaneously simplify and create pathways to understanding complexity through augmented embodied experience, to transform our collective capacity and create a harmonic future. We must first envision it. How might we harness augmented reality, 3D modeling, and other creative visualization toolsets for systems interventions? What new insights can be had? Through interactive visualizations, we become able to see synergies and interdependencies in systems and make the invisible visible, as Bucky would say. Next.
I know this all sounds really positive, and you might say, you know, there's a lot to be worried about and fearful about in the world right now. And I want to acknowledge that and acknowledge that there is a lot to grieve. And also want to state that pessimism is a luxury for a less urgent time. We know that we have the technological capability to get out of this quagmire. And it's time that we use everything, all of the arrows in our quiver, in order to design a world that works for all.
We get to step into our full human beings, beings that feel, that hold complexity, that strive to build community and collectively seek to build for all life on the planet to thrive. We get to remember who we are. We are stewards of the earth. We get back in touch with our holistic beingness. And at the intersection of art, design, and science is complexity, systems thinking, authenticity, and trust. The power of art and design is we are able to capture this complexity in communication. Through Leaders on Purpose, you are redefining your corporate strategies through revolutionary visioning. We need futurists, design thinkers, thought leaders to help translate these future visions, to generate scenarios for us to imagine in preparation for our uncertain times. With clear truth, authentic intention, and real insights, we can build connection through a whole human and establish energetic power to process and progress towards common vision scenarios for the future. This is why we created the Design Science Studio. The Design Science Studio is a decade-long anticipatory art and design-driven accelerator for revolutionary creators. All creative outputs are focused on articulating a world that works for 100% of life over the course of the next 10 years in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals, in alignment with the Design Science Decade. But what types of creators do I mean? We have 2D artists, 3D artists, 4D artists, painters, illustrators, creative writers, sculptors, creative code artists, data visualization artists, augmented reality, virtual reality, game designers, community organizers, experience product designers, producers, philosophers, performers, musicians, scientists, poets. They have banded together to utilize their hearts and souls for this mission. This is a snapshot of our creators from our first cohort. They are all over the world and committed across all of their talents to focusing and harnessing their work and connect the outputs of their work to this greater mission. You may have noticed that there are world-class artists and designers who have been present in the sessions with you, translating the essence of these concepts, the potential and solutions in your sessions to visual form. Thanking them, I will first tell you a little bit more about the essence of what we are doing in the world. We're amplifying creative expression to fuel the revolution, providing these resources for creative campaigns that foster storytelling for change. We're connecting companies and initiatives and thought leaders and change makers with creators to amplify their messages. And we're birthing media that inspires collective action. We're here in support of these creators. And Nico, if you'll show the revolutionary art side from our first cohort, tell them a little bit more about some of these creators. For example, one of our artists is building an infinite reality game called Togetherland that involves thousands of players to change the way we perceive the world. There's a temple for water, a fully interactive audiovisual museum for our mother element. We have illustrated books, immersive installations, interactive systems thinking toolkits, new governance systems, eco-village blueprints, protest music, all for the Renaissance. Now going back to just shout out to these creators who we have live with us today, thanking them for taking their energy and time to be with us. Gato, Ganel, Jeremy, Kyle, really excited for you guys to learn more about each and every one of them. Each of them has a hold on upon themselves. They have missions in the world that they have decided to connect and bridge together. Dave Zabowski was one of the Disney's animators for some of our favorite classics. Some of our partners are here from climate designers, just incredible painter, Amanda Sage. I could go on and on. And this is a tiny little bit of the greater team that is here. But what is the studio providing for them? The studio 3 pillars are community, curriculum, and showcase. And these interwoven pillars are built to scaffold these creators with full systems thinking tools. Then they have in the curriculum, we're covering these important meta topics to help them feel tooled up.
There's a lot that we are sharing and kind of co-learning with all of these artists. There's so much to get up to speed on in this complex world, but a lot of it is inspired by Buckminster Fuller and people who are kind of tuning into those same nature-based principles. We're learning about regeneration and about this idea of a geoscope, kind of a microscope of looking at the world and being able to see the patterns around us in order to anticipate change and be able to be trim tabs, outsized leverage points within systems where we can tweak and really create cascading benefits and these cycles of health and wealth around the world.
The other pillars, which I mentioned, are a community platform in which they support and uplift one another. And the third is where we support them to powerfully launch their work into the world. The studio is designed to build capacity in creators and connect their work to individuals, organizations, and initiatives like yours who are already propelling social, systemic, and planetary solutions for a regenerative future that works for 100% of life. Over the course of the decade of the studio, 2,500 projects will be stewarded into the world. For our first cohort, we'll have 144 projects that we aim to guide, fund, and execute. We will launch coordinated campaigns to be able to share these messages globally. We are a funnel, a speaker moving between the needle and the rest of the world through design, art, creative development, and interdisciplinary innovation. Our strategic partnerships are built to support a greater network. We have an amazing network of different partners who have networks upon themselves of creators, and together we are a vessel to support and be one part of this greater global mission for regeneration and a world that works for all life. By aligning creative campaigns and communication strategies, we build a bridge for understanding and collective action. That means we are not only designing to help you, but we are built to design with you, the collective you, and with this movement. Many creators, myself included, have found home in the studio and this broader network. We're on a mission together. We are not only not alone, we are integral and interdependent and so needed. A core principle of regenerative design is always zooming out to see your place within a system and seeing the inflows and outflows of your effects within that system. The studio is committed to being an ecosystem partner for the regenerative movement, with leaders on purpose and with our greater sustainable development goals that we will reach together. As an ecosystem partner, there are so many ways to engage. We will follow up and share. There are different ways that we are launching in addition to programs with the studio. Imagine our Collaboratory, a creative visualization, think tank, rapid prototyping, inclusive innovation space that help you reach your goals on the cutting edge of experiential technology. But we're an ecosystem partner. We're in this together. And we'll follow up with art from our creators from today's session and give you clear ways to get engaged and collaborate for the future we all know is possible, because we are part of this system together. We want to acknowledge you and thank you for welcoming us to join you on this momentous day. We want to acknowledge each and every one of you and thank you for the stand that you are taking in the world. The choices that you and your companies make have cascading effects at a systems level. Thank you for your commitment to making choices that collectively will massively contribute to shifting our world and our economy to a system that is designed for all beings to thrive, not just some. We are so excited to be architecting the future together.